In Pittsburgh, there's no protection from the howling, icy winds.
It just gets this bitter, bitter cold that just sinks into your marrow, and it makes you wonder why you would ever want to leave the house.
We'll get heavy snows and really bracing winds. You know, wind chills that'll take the temperature below zero very easily.
Equally harsh, the winds of change began turning the Steel City into a Rust Belt has-been. But in the late 80s, Pittsburgh fought back.
This was the beginning of a transformation into a service industry of education, technology, and medicine.
Defying the cutting cold, Pittsburgh strives to be cutting edge. In 1989, Children's Hospital is the jewel in the city's crown.
It's such a thriving medical community, and this is where tons of cutting-edge research is done. At the time, the transplant area was just blossoming, especially in pediatrics.
That reputation draws top interns, like 26-year-old Dr. Jeffrey Farkas.
So I thought that Pittsburgh was an extremely safe city and thought it'd be a nice place to live. So being safe is one reason why he came to Pittsburgh.
In 1988, there were only 24 homicides in the whole year, and I believe we solved all of them. In 1989, I believe that we had maybe 30, 35 homicides.
December 3rd, 1989, a typically frigid Sunday night. Jeff returns to the house he rents on Beechwood Boulevard in the quiet neighborhood of Squirrel Hill. It's actually his second trip home that night.
Dr. Farkas was home alone, and a friend of his had gone to a restaurant in Squirrel Hill, and when he came out, his battery had died. So he called Dr. Farkas and asked if he could come down and give him a jump.
That is so typical Jeff. I mean, he's the kind of person that, yeah, you would call him. He would have said, hey, you know, even though it's Sunday night and I'm, you know, home, I'm nice and warm, no, yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes.
About 6 hours later, one of his two roommates arrives.
His roommate came home that morning a little bit after 4, and he found it unusual that there were lights on upstairs in Jeff's room, because again, it's a little bit after 4 in the morning.
Yet Jeff's car is not outside.
He goes to the door, and it's open a crack.
Jeff?
The roommate is also a doctor, Kent Driscoll.
Jeff?
He entered the house and he saw that things were just not the way he thought they should be.
But what really made his stomach sink was when he walked into the kitchen, and there on the floor was Jeff's wallet with his driver's license and his credit cards strewn about.
Jeff!
Also, a bloody knife.
He got something to protect himself because now he was really scared, and he went upstairs.
And goes into the bathroom and finds his friend and roommate in a very horrific fashion. dead.
Didn't want to be in the house even long enough to call the police. He ran out.
Jumps into his car and drives to the Zone 6 Pittsburgh police station, which isn't very far away. Runs in screaming, "My roommate's been murdered."
Officers rush to the scene.
Got the entire homicide squad called out, the entire mobile crime unit called out.
Police comb the house for intruders. No one's there. After the coroner removes the victim, detectives try to make sense of the unspeakable crime.
It appeared to us that he had been picked up and pile-driven into the bathtub. So he was head down, his head was cocked, and his feet were leaning out of the tub.
He was tied up, he was stabbed, he appeared to be strangled with a cord.
There were 4 knives, a pair of scissors. One knife was bent, one was broken.
The killer used them to stab Jeff's chest, neck, and head, even his eyes. But the murderer didn't stop there.
The toilet tank top was broken in several pieces. Parts of that were in the tub. There was an andiron that was from downstairs that was there, that was broken also.
You get a shot of that.
The attacker put a lot of time and effort into this slaughter.
Thought went into it. There was activity went into it where they had to go to this location to find the scissors. They had to go to this location to get the knives. Clearly, this person is of one mindset. I'll do whatever it takes to kill the victim.
Curiously, police find a cord cut from the vacuum intricately knotted around Jeff's neck.
It wasn't the typical knot that one sees when somebody ties their shoes or ties a necktie or when they tie a rope together. This was a more complex, more complicated knot. And so that's something right away you say, aha, is this person specifically trained in this because they're whatever occupation they might have or had at one time.
The most bizarre detail of all, a carved wooden Caribbean art mask placed near the body. It also has stab marks in the eyes.
You've got to ask yourself, what's the significance to the mask? That is really the person who's responsible conveying a message to us and to the world. You're not going to identify me for this. There's going to be nobody to identify me.
It was definitely overkill. There was a lot of violence there.
Probably trying to send
I
us a
have seen
message.
certain things like that before, and always it was somebody that the victim knew.
Though the intense violence seems personal, the scattered wallet and other burglary evidence points to a more random motive. Mixed messages from a murderer.
Early in the investigation, you just really don't realize the significance of what you have. Is this something that was staged to throw us off, to make it look like there was a stranger? Or is this something that occurred during a robbery, burglary, murder? We're looking for fibers, hairs. We're looking for fingerprints. We're looking for anything that might have been touched.
Most telling is what detectives haven't found. Jeff's car. It's missing, possibly stolen by the killer. Police put out an APB.
And so what we did was contact Maryland, West Virginia, Ohio, New York State Police and had them broadcast the description of the victim's car every hour statewide, because who knows how far this person could have traveled.
The horrifying news travels fast. That morning, Jeff's great aunt, who lives in the city, learns of the tragedy.
She heard on the news that a young doctor who lived in Squirrel Hill on Beechwood Boulevard was murdered. And she knew Jeff was a young doctor who lived in Squirrel Hill on Beechwood Boulevard and figured it couldn't be anybody else.
She and Jeff's uncle race to the house, confirm their fears, and call Jeff's dad in Florida.
And I got a phone call from my brother. Didn't pull any punches. He said, "Jerry, Jeff's dead. The police are here. They got all the place cordoned off." One of the worst things that can happen is the death of a child, because it's against nature. A child is not supposed to die before you do. You know, why Jeff? Why is this happening?
It's a question detectives ask Jeff's roommate, Kent Driscoll.
Everybody's a suspect, including the individual that reports the crime. We try to eliminate everybody, and then what we have left is the person that did the crime.
Why didn't he call from the home? Why didn't he use the home phone? Did he leave the house because he wanted to stage a burglary?
As the sun rises on one of Pittsburgh's most grisly killings, an icy fear grips family, residents, and police. The brutal killing has made the winter that much colder. In a quiet, snowy neighborhood, police investigate the savage murder of Dr. Jeffrey Farkas, an intern at Pittsburgh's Children's Hospital.
To commit a crime this heinous, you have to be demented. I mean, you have to have something wrong with you. You have to be a monster.
Veteran detectives could not believe the brutality that they found. This was a bad one. This was a whodunit. And they had never seen a crime scene so horrific.
How the monster gained entry isn't clear.
Although the house was ransacked and there looked like there had been a fight, there was no sign of forced entry. There was no broken windows, there was no broken door. So that would suggest that the victim knew the person that killed him.
You think it's somebody that he knows, that he let in the house, or somebody that has a key to the house.
At least two other people have keys, Jeff's roommates.
So the two that we had to look at from the very beginning were the two housemates.
Usually when you have that type of overkill, what you have is some sort of relationship between the victim and the person that did the killing. There is a rage that that person has, and he's taking it out on the body.
Investigators continue questioning Kent Driscoll.
Kent's fingerprints were found on one knife. Of course, he covered that by saying, yeah, I went there and I became very suspicious, so I picked up a knife. And then you think to yourself, it's unusual, a doctor picking up a knife and going through the house. It's not what your normal reaction would be.
They ask where he was that evening.
He worked late at the hospital, and then he left the hospital and went home.
But his alibi's not airtight.
People can't account for every minute of every day generally, and so there were some time lapses there. Well, then you think, wow, he could have driven from the hospital home, killed him, and driven back, and nobody would have missed him.
Investigators interview the other roommate, Donovan Lentz. His alibi is solid.
He was with his girlfriend almost the entire night. Based on verifying where he was at the time the murder took place, we were able to eliminate Donovan.
By dawn on the morning of the murder, police find a potential clue.
In the snow, there were two shoe impressions. That is, they're three-dimensional, they have depth. And we could see the pattern.
Forensic techs make snow casts.
Snow is different than soil or mud because when you put the material in, it generates a little bit of heat and tends to melt it. So you have to be very careful, and you have to spray it with a specific chemical first so it sets up and it doesn't melt, and you have to be careful how you put the material in.
The impressions were made by size 13 shoes and don't match what Jeff or his roommates wear. It's still so little to go on. Jeff's loss is a hard reality to face.
He was extremely friendly. When you met Jeff, he made sure that you were a friend right from the very beginning. People just loved to be around him.
He really had that kind of carpe diem attitude to him. I have a picture of Jeff, and he took it during the intern retreat. He took this great selfie with his grin, and this grin is just so infectious and so mischievous. There's this twinkle in his eyes. I love that picture of him because it just says so much about him and about the kind of person he was.
He also had a more serious side, a commitment to help others.
One day he called me up and said, "Dad, I want to be a doctor." Kind of shocked me a little bit, and I said, "Well, that's a pretty big undertaking, Jeff." And he said, "Yeah, but that's what I want to do. I've been working with kids." He decided he wanted to be a pediatrician.
After medical school in Michigan, Jeff does a rotation at a Detroit emergency room.
Detroit had a lot of violent crime, and Jeff saw that working in the trauma center, and it affected him.
One time he was walking out of the hospital with his friends, and they were mugged. His friend was shot. And that was not the kind of environment that he wanted to work in.
He moves to Pittsburgh to intern at the prestigious Children's Hospital, attracted by the city's relative safety.
Is that all right? Okay. I'm coming here to listen.
Dr. Farkas had a special gift with children.
He discovered that he had a natural ability to ease a child's fear of the medical environment. The kids that he worked with just absolutely loved him.
Like one young girl who was suffering from Crohn's disease.
One thing he had to do was listen to her stomach. So he'd put the stethoscope on her stomach and say, "Oh, good morning, Mr. Stomach. Boy, you sound great today, much better than yesterday." The girl just thought the world of him.
Wow.
It made her stay in the hospital tolerable.
Jeff's compassionate soul makes his death all the more tragic.
A lot of our killings, they're drug-related. They're people that are criminals themselves and put themselves in bad situations. Dr. Farkas was the complete opposite. Totally innocent person whose desire and wishes were to help mankind.
All right, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
People said, Pittsburgh's a pretty safe town. Maybe you should go there. And he liked Children's Hospital, so he applied. And there is tremendous irony in that. He came to a place that he thought was safe, and that's where he died.
Jeff's body was so brutalized, the medical examiner can't even determine which injury caused his death.
It was attributable to blunt force trauma, strangulation, to stabbing. Any of those would have been fatal. The coroner likened it to a body that was killed in a high-speed collision in an automobile. That's how brutally he was beaten.
The 3 knife wounds to each eye are especially disturbing.
On a personal, emotional level, you really thought, was this necessary? Why did you have to stab Dr. Farkas in the eyes? He's dead.
And the matching wounds to the Caribbean mask.
It felt almost as if a diabolical kind of spit in your face type of thing. Like, I did this, I'm proud of it, I'm displaying something here.
Is that display a clue in itself? The mask was a childhood present.
His mother and I had a business trip to Nassau. And we were just doing some shopping, wanted to bring him back a gift. And so that was kind of special to him.
The fact it was a personal item that was cherished by Dr. Farkas, it was his. He kept it in the bedroom close to him. And so we had to ask ourselves, was it somebody that knew Dr. Farkas and knew his relationship to this piece of art? So again, that raises another red flag.
In any homicide, there's usually a connection between the victim and the person that murdered him. In this case, that's what we thought. We have a case of overkill. We have a personal item that was brought by the victim's parents and given to him, and that was in the tub with them.
Unlike the police, Jeff's friends can't believe he knew his killer.
It's just so over the top that we knew this was a stranger. We knew this wasn't, anyone that Jeff knew.
Investigators start to think the same, especially once they rule out roommate Kent Driscoll.
What he said was backed up. We were able to go and interview people that verified his whereabouts when this happened.
The killer remains free to slay again.
So there was some fear among residents that this was going to continue.
In homicide investigations, rarely do you reach out to the FBI. Unless you have a very strange or unusual case, something that they can work with. Clearly, this was an overkill. The eyes, that was highly unusual. The uniqueness of it told us immediately, you got to call the FBI.
Freeman tells an FBI criminal profiler about the brutal attack, the eyes, and the Caribbean mask. The profiler can't link the attacker to other recent crimes, but he knows this type of sick psychology and gives a dire warning.
And what he told us, it was very chilling. He said, catch him, because he's probably done it before and he'll do it again.
Pittsburgh's bleak winter turns even crueler as the murder of a beloved pediatrician grabs the headlines.
The whole city was kind of a buzz about this. People were feeling frightened. A lot of people were kind of hanging out at work and saying, do you want me to walk you to your car? We were all kind of a little bit on edge.
A shadowy killer still stalks the icy suburban streets.
We don't know how fast his predatory clock is ticking. Some it will be days between killings, some it will be weeks, and some it will be months. With this person, we didn't know how fast that clock was ticking. We don't want somebody else to die like this, so let's get him.
Seeking leads, investigators conduct interviews with everyone in Jeff's inner circle.
They did that by talking to their roommates, by examining Jeff's life going all the way back to high school and coming up to present time, even interviewing his paper girl.
He never did anything wrong. I mean, he wasn't dealing in drugs. He wasn't going out with a married woman. He wasn't doing any of that kind of stuff. The deeper they dug, the more they realized what Jeff's personality was and what a kind person, giving person that he was.
You see case after case where somebody's died or murdered. It was, oh, he was a great guy. When in fact, they weren't. But in this case, it was absolutely true. And there was not one person said one negative thing about him. Everything was positive.
Jeff literally didn't have an enemy in the world, which means his murder might be random after all.
We couldn't find anything that would indicate to us that somebody did this as a vengeful thing. So we were looking for a stranger.
That made the investigation so much more difficult. It can be anyone, almost.
Detectives found that a number of items were missing, including a VCR, a CD player, a telephone answering machine, and a 35mm camera. They were pretty sure that what they had was a burglary, which turned into a robbery, which turned into a homicide.
Police get a lead about the shoe prints in the snow when they learn a call came in about a strange man walking around Beechwood Boulevard near Jeff's house that night.
There had been a number of burglaries in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood, so there was some fear that whoever was committing these burglaries was the person who had killed Jeff.
Investigators talk to residents who remember a tall, young African-American man who knocked on their door and asked for a woman named Cindy.
This is a trick that burglars use. They will go to a darkened house, knock on the door, and make up a name if somebody comes to the door.
They became alarmed because he didn't seem sincere in what he was doing. It looked like he just sort of wanted to get in. And they told him nobody lives here, that name. And one watched him walk down her steps and make a left and go towards the neighbor's house.
The second neighbor was even more suspicious.
He felt that there was something shaky about him, and he called the police.
Dispatch sent a patrolman.
And the officer, using his flashlight, saw shoe impressions going to the back of the house, which meant, he was back there. So that suggested this guy is not looking for Cindy, he's looking to do something.
The officers searched the area, but didn't find anyone.
Unfortunately, Jeff Farkas's killer already was in Jeff's house.
Detectives compare the shoe impressions from the neighbor's house and find a match to those in Jeff's yard.
This has got to be our guy. I mean, it was the most promising thing we had up to that point, and we focused on that.
Neighbors provide enough detail to create a composite sketch.
It was a tall black man who was wearing an army coat with a hoodie and was carrying a dark knapsack.
As detectives work on the sketch, they catch another break. The APB on Jeff Farkas's missing car pays off.
Jeff had a 1989 Acura that was found the next morning 3 miles away in a town called Homestead, which is right across the Monongahela River.
That gave us another scene to process, and we sent technicians there. And it was interesting because there was snow. They found footwear impressions in the snow that matched the ones we had back at the house.
Techs search for fingerprints, fibers, any kind of evidence to link to the killer, but come up empty.
However, the location of the car was a clue.
With the cold weather, we feel somebody's not going to park the car and go a great distance walking.
They begin canvassing, hoping someone saw something.
We contacted every bus driver that was on duty that night around those times. Did you pick up anybody in this area? We called every cab company, and it was negative.
3 days after the murder, Jeff's family holds his funeral. Friends, co-workers, and patients line up to pay their respects.
I don't know how many. To me, it looked like hundreds. And each one wanted to say something about Jeff. It's about how he personally affected their life.
At first, I remember feeling a little jaded and wondering, do all these people really know him, or are they just here because it's been in the newspapers and the news? But then as people started speaking and as, I began listening to their conversations, I realized these were all people that Jeff had touched with his life.
The rabbi calls his life an immeasurable blessing.
When I was at the funeral home and had these literally hundreds of people wanting to talk and tell a story about a situation that happened that affected them, that involved Jeff. It was just mind-boggling. I mean, how could one person in 6 months touch so many lives? I don't know. To me, that's special. I mean, it's special.
The crime lab works around the clock on the hundreds of fingerprints collected.
The pressure on detectives was immense. They had that report from the FBI Behavioral Sciences Unit, which urged them immediately to find this guy for fear that he was going to do it again. They felt that they were racing this person, and the longer the investigation went on, the fear grew that they were going to lose and he was going to win.
Get more ice-cold killers online at investigationdiscovery.com. An icy chill slices through the Pittsburgh community after the brutal slaying of pediatric intern Jeffrey Farkas.
He cared, but he cared in a way that wasn't heavy. It didn't make you feel like obligated. It was more of a generosity of spirit. And that really is the kind of man he was as far as being a friend, but it was also the kind of doctor he was with his patients and his patients' families.
When fingerprint analysis from the crime scene comes through, most of the prints match Jeff, his roommates, and friends.
They had identified every fingerprint in that house but one, and that was a thumbprint that was left on the door of the bathroom. And they were praying that that was the fingerprint of the person who had killed Dr. Jeffrey Farkas.
That print has an unusual characteristic: a straight line across the bottom.
The technician felt that whoever deposited this fingerprint because of that line was wearing a Band-Aid on the finger.
This partial print might hold all the answers, but IDing it will take time. Automated fingerprint systems weren't online in 1989. Aside from the partial print, investigators have footprints in the snow and the victim's car, found abandoned in Homestead. No one knows the area better than the cops.
We spoke to the Homestead police, the officers that were working night turn, asked them if they saw anything, they noticed anything, and the one officer said, "I saw this guy and he was walking. He's one of our bad guys, he's a real criminal." And he was not too far away from where the car was, and so he gave us the guy's name.
It's Lucas Hillman.
He had a history of violence. He had been arrested multiple times. He had served time in prison. He was a drug user. He had committed armed robberies. He had committed burglaries and thefts. And so he had a long criminal history. The type of person that could commit this type of murder.
Detectives wonder if he's the creepy man in the army jacket and backpack asking neighbors about a woman named Cindy. They bring him in for questioning. He admits he was in the area where Jeff's car was found.
It's freezing out here. What took you so long?
But only because he was visiting a friend who lived there.
He was able to give us a partial alibi, and we talked to some other people, and his print didn't match the print on the inside of the door. And we were eventually able to clear him.
More time wasted. Commander Freeman throws all the department's resources at the case.
Vacation days were canceled, off days were canceled. 6 additional detectives from the burglary, robbery, and mobile crime unit squads were assigned to homicide temporarily. This was priority number 1 in the Pittsburgh Police Department.
Police reach out to the public for help.
There's 2 things that bring people out, and that is a reward and a composite. And we had both in this case. $20,000 offered by the family, and we had a composite.
When you put out a composite, it's a double-edged sword. People don't like somebody, so they say it matches that person. And so you've got to follow up on that. It just creates a lot of work.
Most of the calls end up going nowhere, but one tip seems promising.
We got a call from someone, and they said, I know a person that looks like the composite sketch. And he's seeing this girl named Cindy. We didn't give this information out about Cindy.
A man's name, Jamal Jackson, and he's bad news.
He had a long criminal history, a lot of violence, drugs, and that's the kind of person who will go out and beat somebody up and kill them and take their money. Not only did he match the description physically, he habitually wore a backpack, which the two people across the street saw, and he also had a green army jacket.
Detectives track him down.
He knew that we really saw him as a possible suspect, a very viable suspect, and he didn't want to be linked to that murder. And so he finally, after several days, agreed to cooperate. And he gives us an alibi.
It checks out, and his shoe size doesn't match the prints from the crime scene.
And we were able to go back and then clear him. He was not involved. When we realized that Jamal was not our killer, it is very disappointing to us because as a unit, we thought this was probably our guy.
Police still believe Homestead, where Jeff's car was found, is the right place to look. So they return there and try putting themselves in the killer's size 13s.
Well, we're doing the canvass of the Homestead area around where the car was found. I was working with my partner, and I says, you know, it was so cold that night. This guy had to stop somewhere. So we pulled into a fast food place, the first one past the Homestead high-level bridge. We walked in there, and I spoke with the manager, and he said that he was working that night, and he remembered a guy coming in, and the reason why he remembered him was the guy was so tall.
And he was wearing a backpack and an army-type jacket, and he had the hood up.
We felt that the individual who was at the fast food restaurant was also the individual who was on Beechwood Boulevard asking for Cindy.
Unfortunately, there's no security camera. The man ordered a triple cheeseburger, paid cash, then left, vanishing into the cold.
And so, yeah, you feel pressure. He felt a real obligation to get him before he kills again, because he's going to kill again.
In Pittsburgh, the heat is on to find an ice-cold killer who might be on the prowl for his next victim. But police are still a long way from catching him.
They got a lot of calls, they brought in people of interest, but nothing panned out. Detectives are just totally frustrated. They're running out of leads.
They re-interview witnesses, hoping someone will remember new information.
They basically went back and retraced their steps. And in talking to the witnesses from the fast food restaurant who had seen this person come in, they talked about the man's height, and the detectives were under the impression that they were talking of, when they said tall, that they meant 6'3", 6'4". And these witnesses now said, no, we mean tall like somebody who would be the center on a basketball team. And the detective said, well, what are we talking about? 6'7", 6'8", something like that.
At a loss, they review files on all recent parolees.
I contacted the supervisor down there, and I told him that we were looking for anybody from the Duquesne, Homestead, Munhall area who may have been released from prison.
It means sifting through hundreds of records. Detectives have to play it smart.
There were just so many, so we decided to eliminate everybody who was 6'4" and below. We only looked at people to start with 6'5" and above. We came across an individual who was 6'8", was on parole for a burglary in the same general area.
The man is 24-year-old William Yarbo.
As soon as I saw his picture, I told my partner, I said, this is him. We actually drew a hood on the picture, and it looked just like the composite.
They go immediately get his printed fingerprint card, compare it to the thumbprint. They go, we got the guy. You know, I mean, that was sort of a eureka moment.
I'll never forget, I was sitting in my office, and all of a sudden, the fingerprint technician is standing there. He said, it's him, we got him, we got him, we got him. He was really excited about it, as was everybody.
Investigators determine Yarbo is a cook at a fast food restaurant, not far from victim Jeff Farkas's house.
And they go in, asked if he can come outside. He does, and they took him into custody without incident.
Me and my partner went back and interviewed the manager. We asked her if he had a locker. We were going to get a search warrant. He said, no, everybody leaves their stuff there. Right there was a large size 13 shoe sitting there, and I said, who do they belong to? And she said, they belong to William Yarbo.
The pattern on the sole matches the impression left in Jeff's yard and by his car. And technicians find Jeff's blood on one of Yarbo's shoes.
When he was arrested, it was observed that he had a Band-Aid on one of his fingers, which matched the information that the fingerprint technicians gave us.
Investigators learn that when Yarbo was young, he'd been sent to a camp for troubled youth. There, he learned a skill he put to use on the night of December 3rd, 1989.
To camp, one of the things they taught them was knot tying. And one of the types of knots they teach them to tie was the type of knot that was found around Dr. Farkas's neck.
They also learn he harbors a lurid fascination with slasher films, even adopting their over-the-top symbolism, like stabbing the eyes out of the mask.
He was obsessed with those kinds of films, and particularly with Freddy Krueger.
Yarbo pleads not guilty. At trial, prosecutors lay out what they believe happened that night. Yarbo was going door to door throughout the neighborhood, looking for a place to break into. When anyone was home, he moved on.
He went to Farkas's house, knocked, received no response, tried the front door, and the latch was open.
Someone simply forgot to lock it. A small but fatal oversight. Yarbo entered and began ransacking the house. When Jeff returned, Yarbo acted on his sick desires.
He had an opportunity, and he lived out his fantasy that he would see on screen.
Dr. Farkas ran into a buzzsaw.
He was getting some kind of emotional high off of this, and that fed into him. This obviously was someone who was comfortable with violence, and with the time and the energy spent with Jeff, was becoming more comfortable with it. And that's why I have no doubt in my mind that he would kill again, given the chance.
Investigators have his fingerprint on the bathroom door and a drop of Jeff's blood on his work shoe.
All those things tied him to the crime. So much so that the jury in the 4-day trial took only 3 hours to find him guilty.
On December 3rd, 1990, on the 1-year anniversary of the murder, William Yarbo is convicted of robbery, burglary, and first-degree murder. He gets life with no chance of parole.
I was elated. I was happy that they caught him. I mean, I'm glad that he's off the streets, that he can't do this again to anybody else. But my feeling was, it's not going to bring my son back. The last time I saw Jeff, I was in Michigan. He had just got his medical degree from Wayne State. I flew back to Florida, where my job was, and I was looking forward to the time that I could be up in Pittsburgh to see him at Children's Hospital, to see him in his work environment. Never got that chance. He was murdered. To me, that's a big tragedy in my life, that I did not have the opportunity to see him work as a doctor.
The Children's Hospital continues to honor Dr. Jeffrey Farkas with an annual award.
We decided to make an award based on the way Jeff was, that it would go to the top intern of the year that showed the most compassion toward patients and parents. They've kept the award going. It's in Jeff's name, and it's very, very important. And that makes me feel really good.
I truly do believe in evil and its presence in the world. But I also believe in good, and Jeff was one of the good guys. The hardest part about him being gone is that we can talk about him and about his memory and the lives he touched, but think about what he could have accomplished if he hadn't been taken at such a young age.